Well, you've kind of seen me do stuff like this before with this fast animation. I think we're going to try something else. This is the beginning of my shop rehab. I'm going to go through my shop, every section, every area, like the woodworking area, the welding area, electronics area, the machine shop area, and completely rehab it, redo it. And this workbench is the inaugural project to get that started. This is a corner of my barn where, you know, it's a tool bench, it's a workbench. Anyway, let's get started here. I put those two stop risers on the front of the workbench, and their job is to make sure that this first piece of oak flooring goes down dead straight and perfectly parallel with the front of the bench. It's going to be tongue out. The groove will be towards the back, and that will give me the ability to lock the new front fascia into it. Now, this is the cheapest oak flooring you can get from Lumber Liquidators. It's 2 1/4 inches wide. It's unfinished. Perfect for a workbench because it's going to get abused over the years. Now, I've used plenty of PL Premium, the urethane adhesive. This stuff is really strong, and you can't break the bond once it sets. Now, first thing we're doing, we get this first piece lined up. It is absolutely critical that this one is lined up perfectly. Everything else will reference from this one edge. So you gotta have your first right on the money. Now, the next thing I'm doing here is we're going to toenail the flooring into the substrate of this bench, which is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. I'm using 1 1/4 18 gauge brads for that. Well, right here I got a little bit of the urethane on the oak, and I'm using mineral spirits to wipe it off. You got to get any urethane off the surface of that oak. If you don't, you'll never be able to get a good finish on it. Wherever that urethane is, you'll never get it out of the grain. So I use mineral spirits to dissolve what gets in the way there. It'll evaporate and it'll be just fine. Here's a kind of a personal note. This drumming of the fingers, I never realized I did this, but whenever I'm thinking or trying to solve a problem and I'm totally focused on it, I'll start drumming my fingers. I never noticed this until I started doing YouTube videos. And every video I've made so far, I caught myself drumming my fingers. And it's kind of funny. You don't even notice you do things like that. I mostly edit it out. You've never seen it in any other videos, but it's in every one in the raw footage. Anyway, I'm sitting here thinking about how I want to lay out the wood, what I want to do. And it's just something I do. Okay, one of the issues with this real cheap oak flooring is the fact that it's not perfectly straight. And they tell me about 20% of it is not real good. It has maybe wormholes in it, or knots, or cracks, or splits, which is not a problem. It was inexpensive. It was 99 cents a square foot, and I got a little over 30 feet I'm using. Probably the biggest trick is to make sure these the gaps on the tongue and groove are tight. Now, I could have used a regular pneumatic nailer that you'd use for a hardwood floor, and that would have worked fine, but it's not necessary, and once I got up towards the wall, it would be not usable. And if I'd have started from the wall and worked my way out, so I could use the nailer, then when I get out to the front edge, I'd be left with some odd size out there. So I chose to do it this way, and I'm guaranteed that lining up the front of the bench is perfect. Now you can see I'm using clamps to pull the gaps tight. The wood is a little warped, and the long ones are particularly bad, but completely usable. Now, it's really important when you're doing something like this to for a bench, you want the longest pieces near the front of the bench in the central work area, because that's going to give you the greatest strength, and you don't have to worry about it. The most important thing is to get a good coat of glue in there and nail her down tight. Once that adhesive sets, those boards are never coming off that bench. And when I'm done, I'm going to have a nice hard oak surface bench, very strong and very pretty bench. Now, I understand it's going to get damaged and banged up over the years. I don't care. It's not a big problem. I can sand it down and I can refinish it if it gets to that point. But I suspect this is going to last at least 10 years without any trouble, unless I abuse it, and I don't have any intentions of doing that. Now you can see it's kind of a constant battle to keep the urethane off the wood, to pull these boards in tight, and it takes longer, but it's not a big deal. The other big thing you have to keep an eye out for is those joints. Just like you're putting down a hardwood floor, you have to overlap those joints. You don't want them mating up with each other. Anyway, it's coming along quite nicely. When I put that first piece down, the first starter strip, I let that set overnight so that it was good and dry and good and secure, because everything else from there is going to be driving against that. But you can see we're getting near the end of this benchtop. I had to bring out the big bar clamps to pull some of that wood in place. It's pretty strong. And now that we're back here near the wall, I can't get into toenail that. So this is surface nailing, but that's okay, because this part of the bench is going to be up near the wall and it's going to be under a shelf, so nobody will ever notice it, and it's not going to be detracting in any way. Besides, it is a workbench. All I was looking for is something with a good hardwood surface that was inexpensive and it would look nice. Now this is the next day. I'm going to cut off these edges, and I just put a straight edge up there and use my saw. We knock off the edge, and I'm using a little edge saw. I think it's a Japanese type saw to get up close to the wall. Now the bench has got an L shape on it and two 45-degree corners, so they got to be cut down. But that's, again, it's just minor details. Now this fascia board is just a piece of oak, and I glued a half-round 1.25 inch bull nose on it, just so I have a nice round edge, something to stylize it. And all the pieces were pre-fit or dry fit in place, so all the angles are cut. Now it may look like I did a really good job on this, but the reality is I'm not a woodworker. It still turned out really nice, but I'm not a woodworker. But I am careful. Now, I decided to use biscuits on the edges, on the sides and the ends. Now the front piece is going to use that existing groove or tongue from the original flooring, but the biscuits here will just help reference the top and the fascia board. I think it's called a fascia board. I don't know what it is. It's the edge of the bench. Now that's a Harbor Freight biscuit cutter, biscuit joiner. I bought it for some project. I use it maybe once or twice a year, I think. Rarely. But it seems to be a good working tool. It was inexpensive. I probably bought it with a coupon, because that would be my normal mode. And for a tool that you rarely use, Harbor Freight's perfectly good if it gets the job done. When I'm done with it, it's going to go back in the tool room. It'll sit there for probably 6 months to a year, or maybe longer before I ever use it again. But it does a good job. Now, I'd like to mention a couple things about my cobalt tools you see on these. I want you to know I bought every one of those. Nobody donated them to me. I'm not promoting them. I like them. I'm really happy with them. I can't complain at all about them. I wish they had a few additional tools like a 3/8 ratchet and such, but for what I've had so far, I'm completely happy with it. Now here you can see I'm using a good Type Bond 3 wood glue to set those biscuits in, and that's gonna get that fascia board referenced up to that end of the bench. It's gonna look real nice. Well, that's 1x6 oak, solid oak fascia. The fascia boards on this is actually the most expensive wood on the entire project. I spent more for that than I did for the wooden top. Now here I'm applying a liberal amount of the urethane adhesive. This will fill in any gaps and voids, and as it swells, it bonds really well into the fibers of the wood. So I don't have to worry about it ever coming loose, I believe. Now watch how nice this snaps in. I'm quite proud of that. Look at that. Nice tight fit. I'm very proud of that. That's not too bad for somebody that doesn't do woodworking for a living. But again, I did pre-fit these things, and you don't see how many times I went back to the table saw just to shave off a fraction of an inch so that I had a nice joint. Now I could have just built a square corner bench. I just have a thing about benches with square corners. They lack style, no character. So I put 45s on things. I mean, I do have a couple benches that are square corner, but I prefer the 45. Pop, look at that. Right in there nice and tight. Wait till you see how it turned out finished. Now this is the front fascia board. This is a piece of oak. It was 8 foot long. I cut it down to a little over 6 foot, 6.5 feet, something like that. And I put a groove in it. And that groove's function is to lock into the tongue of the flooring, or that first board I put down as my at the beginning. Now I'm putting some urethane in there between the joints where the two corner pieces will come together. And then again, another liberal application of urethane. Considering all the projects I've done so far on YouTube, most of them seem to be woodworking projects, but honestly, I don't do woodworking projects. This is just something I need to do to make this bench a little more presentable. I'm trying to redo the barn so that when I want to come out here and shoot a video, it's going to be something I'm not embarrassed to show you. I mean, right now it's just a working barn. It's just a mess. But over the next few months, we're going to completely rehab this thing. And there's all the edging. Now we're just going to vacuum up the dust and do a cleanup of it so I can get the backsplash or the back trim. Now the back trim is just some more of the oak flooring, and I cut a 30-degree bevel on it. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive on it and a couple of brads to the wall, and it'll look just fine. It's just there to hide that gap, that's all. Also something for things to bump up against when you're moving around on the bench. Again, there's a cobalt sander. I like it. It's a handy little thing. It's very powerful. Does a good job. It's not as powerful as my DeWalt's AC powered one, but it's a pretty good unit. I can't complain about it. Like I said, just a couple of brads, and they're anchored in place. Once the adhesive's set, they're not going anywhere. It's not like they're going to be under any kind of load. They're just thin. Well, somebody said in one of the videos I talk too much. But the whole idea of a how-to video is to see how to do something. And I try to be as clear and explanatory as possible. What you're seeing here is I couldn't find a wood putty or filler that was exactly what I wanted. So I took two different ones and I blended them together to kind of soften them up a little bit. The wood's variegated color, it's never going to match perfectly, but that's okay. Like I said, this is not fine furniture building. This is a workbench. But still, any little tiny gaps and voids I'd like to fill in. The only problem with doing that is every time I'd find a spot, I'd find another spot and find another spot. I finally gave up and says, okay, those are just going to have to be the way they are. Otherwise, I'd be there all day just looking for little tiny voids. And here I'm just rough sanding it with a belt sander at 60 grit. Kind of knock down the putty and then smoothing out the wood. Then we're doing a medium sanding 80 grit. That'll take down any bumps and cut through what's there pretty quick. And then we're going to come back and do 120 grit, and that'll be the finished sanding ready for finishing stain or oil. So far it just looks like a nice little wood bench, but wait till you see it in a minute. The oil on it is going to look great. You can always tell the project's nearly done when the tape goes up. Now here I'm wiping it down with a tack cloth to pick up any last little bit of dust. The finish is going to be obviously linseed oil. I was thinking about using a poly, either an oil-based or a water-based, and I decided this will be better. It'll keep the wood healthier over time. And if it does need to be refinished, I can do a light sanding of it and put a fresh coat of oil on it, and it will return it back to almost new looking condition. But you can't hardly beat oiled wood for appearance. Now I'm going to put two applications of this oil on. The first one, I'll put it on, I'll let it set about 15 minutes, and then I'll wipe off the excess and let it dry overnight. And then the following day I'll put a second coat on and repeat that. I'll wipe off the excess. If you don't get the excess off, I know that it will gum. It'll get sticky. So you really want to get it off. You want to saturate the wood and you want to work it in. And I did. I rubbed, after I got it coated, then I went back and just rubbed it for maybe another 20 minutes, putting pressure on it to build a little heat in the surface, help open up the grain of the wood, and get that oil deeper into the wood fibers themselves. But I'm completely happy with it. I know it's a workbench, but it's my workbench. I'll probably abuse it a little bit over the years, but that's okay. It's going to be strong and well suited for the type of work I'll be using it for. Now I chose this, as I said, as my inauguration video for my shop rehab. I hope you all will subscribe and follow along. Make sure you ring the bell so you know when I come out with videos. I'm going to work hard this year in getting out a regular video. I'm not going to find silly little videos to do. I'm going to have real solid project videos as I do them. And I will try to get them out as regular as possible. I'm hoping once a week, but I can't promise. Some of the things I'm working on right now are 2-month projects. And they're working on the background, but I cannot release the stuff on them yet because they're just not ready to be released. Isn't that nice? It's just getting off the extra oil. The next video coming out will be this whole section finished up. I'll have the sink put back in, the washing machine, the shelves, some tools on it, all the trim work and lighting. Now how's that? Look at those joints. Not too bad for a non-woodworker. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe. Hit the bell so you can be informed of the upcoming projects, and wait to see how this whole area turns out. Thanks again for watching. I do appreciate it.
Were you videotaping still? Good? No, don't put your fingers in front of it, honey. All right, hit stop. All right, hit stop.